Hi, I'm Ellen Besen. I'm the author of Animation Unleashed, published by Mukawisi Productions. You can reach me after the seminar at ebesen at simpatico.ca. And today what I'm going to be talking about is animation in the 21st century, 5 things, actually secretly more, that every filmmaker should know. I say filmmaker very, very deliberately. It wasn't that long ago that animation was an obscure subset of live action filmmaking. The word itself was actually unknown. You'd have to talk to people for many, many minutes for them to even understand what you were talking about when you said you worked in animation. And it was restricted to children's programming, some TV ads, educational films, that kind of stuff. So the explosion it's gone through since then, in a very relatively short period of time, less than 40 years, is enormous. Because now, of course, animation is in everything and everywhere. It's reaching every kind of audience, from children right through till adults, and that will only continue to move through the culture that way. So therefore, it's on primetime TV. It is on daytime TV. It is in it's in TV series. It's used in commercials widely. But the biggest thing that affects live action people is that because once film becomes digital, you can start to play with it at the level of the frame, which is the primary definition of animation. And because digital effects and even dealing with human character is getting more and more realistic, often when you think you're watching pure live action, you are, of course, watching a mix of the two. And that, again, is only going to increase for all kinds of practical reasons and creative reasons. So what it becomes now is that if you are working in live action, you will almost certainly be working with animation at some point, if not frequently. And the trick is that even though when it looks very much like live action, in fact, even when it looks identical to live action footage, animation is created with a different mindset, and it's important to understand it, and the medium itself has different properties. And it's important to know some of those differences. So think of this as a starting point for realizing that animation is a bit different, and to use it well, the more you need to understand its nature. So the first thing is that you start with nothing, and you can therefore do anything. The key thing about that is that it means every decision of everything you're going to see on the screen is within your power. It's a wonderful amount of power, but it's also a lot of responsibility. And one of the primary errors that first-time players with this medium use is that they forget to think about these decisions. They forget that it's in their power to do things the way they want to do them. Therefore, they go to generic solutions for everything without actually making the right decision. So the realization that how tall characters are, how long the roads they're going to be running on, the road's curvy, every property of the road they're going to be running around on is your decision. And you can decide, well, a straight road that we're going to be able to see a long distance might work best here, but a curvy road that's going to show how badly a character drives is going to be more interesting in another situation. And just even remembering that that is within your power, making it the habit that you think, wait a second, is that my best choice, or have I just gone to an automatic thought, is one incredibly important part of animated thinking. 2, you start with nothing and you have to do everything. That means that every new thing, every new detail you add into your film makes more work, often unbelievable amount more work than you would ever imagine. If your decision to put 3 more buttons on a character's shirt is going to be driving everybody down the production pipe crazy because the buttons aren't really necessary. They could have been done with 1 button, or for goodness sake, make it a zipper that no one can see, and save them about the extra amount of time they're taking to put this detail in. Typical mistakes that new filmmakers make working in animation: they use too many characters, for example. Every character you put in has to, again, we're starting with nothing, has to be designed in every way, animated in every gesture. Everything has to be done from nothing. If the character isn't really necessary, you take it out. If you have 2 or 3 characters that can be combined into one, you combine them. The kind of character use is also important. I once had someone approach me with a script that was nothing but centipedes. That's a lot of legs, that's a lot of segments, it's a lot of work, all the characters look the same, there's no benefit to it. Just don't go there. Maybe 1 centipede who makes a quick appearance is good enough, but why don't you even just go with an ant? Fewer legs, fewer body parts. That makes a difference, a huge difference to your production. Number 3, where are we? Okay, so because you are starting from nothing, you actually have to build an entire world. And the trick about world building is that you have to give it some logic. The same way that in the real world, we can't just turn gravity on and off. Gravity is there, and we have to work with it. When you decide to put a rule into a world, you have to think about the implications of that rule all the way through the story. Because what you're going to see in sloppy animation filmmaking is you put a rule in because it creates a funny joke or does something at the beginning of the film, and as you get build towards the climax, it's suddenly in the way. So suddenly you just drop it. That you've destroyed the credibility of your world. Basically, the audience might go with you on that, but it's going to be weaker. You're going to weaken the structure of your story, and who wants to do that? So often where you get the strength in a rule is by thinking it through to beyond the obvious level to the next one. A quick example would be there's lots of stories that are based on the idea that objects and toys can talk, and particularly to children. What made Toy Story a very unique story was the toys could talk to each other, and they could talk to humans, but they weren't allowed to. And because the story is about an anxious character who's too conscientious about the rules and he's living in this horrible hierarchical society in the child's room, and he's everything about, he's totally based on fear. The whole story hinges on his willingness towards the end to actually break that rule and speak to a human when he's not supposed to. And that becomes his rebellion and his way of standing up for himself, etc. That's a brilliant use of a rule. Number 4 is that no matter how fantastical your concept, it has to have certain elements, certain attachments to reality. It has to have attachment to emotional reality. So what the difference there, the emotions have to be as believable as real. It's still the thing that hooks your audience in is that they believe what's happening to the characters, they feel what they're feeling. Animation still is based in real emotion and honest emotion and accurate emotion, but it can be expressed in a lot of different ways. You can express it through something fairly close to a live action kind of. The character is angry, so they stomp around, they yell, whatever, slam doors, etc. But you could also either make that, you can let them temporarily take on the traits of, say, a steam kettle and blow their top and have steam come out of every orifice. As long as that fits with it, you can't have that happen out of nowhere, but it can happen within a certain boundary if you set that up as part of the story. Or you can actually make the character be a tea kettle if that's what makes sense, and every time there's a problem, it's the one that's always going to blow its top, and it's built right into the nature of the character itself. Finally, one of your best tools for dealing with all these interesting qualities is exaggeration. When you are dealing in a wholly graphic arena, so here we're not talking so much about the mixed situations, about pure animation, but it starts to overflow into the use of animation in some of these mixed situations where, we're in space or in some place that we don't really, the audience doesn't necessarily know what things are like. It kind of becomes more like the graphic arena. The nature of that is that it tends to automatically exaggerate certain elements beyond ways that are not helpful and swallow other information and kind of damp it down. So tiny movements can become too busy in animation. Big movements can become kind of dead and uninteresting in animation. So a character's face, for example, we have many, many muscles, many tiny moves we're making all the time. Usually if you try and put every single one of those movements into an animated face, it ends up looking like they have ants crawling all over them. That's all it really does. So you think about your character and take away what doesn't need to be there. How realistic is the character? What kind of character is it? What facial expressions is it going to need? How much expression is it going to need to get through its performance? All become the factors that you play with that allow you to have the right amount of exaggeration. So first part of exaggeration, take away anything that isn't really necessary. The other side is what you're left with, then you push further. So if a character is primarily going to be about eyes, maybe they don't even have a mouth, you might want to make the eyes bigger and the eyebrows more expressive, so you have room there to communicate a lot just through that element. When even a realistic character is going to have to make a big movement, say a golf swing or something of that sort, you want to build enough flexibility into the design of the character so when it does move around and stretch itself around a little bit more than a real human could, we don't go, oh, he's about to fall into pieces, or in other way, break the reality. You build in a certain amount of exaggeration all the way through, and that way you maintain credibility. The audience often doesn't even notice that you're doing it if you've done it really well, but it actually is making your whole piece come together in a coherent way. Those are 5 interesting things about animation. There's lots more, of course, to think and talk about. There's lots more in my book. Again, my book is Animation Unleashed. I'm Ellen Besen. You can reach me at ebesen@simpatico.ca. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks for listening.